It was early in the morning when the sun had just started rising over the quiet Georgia highway. The air was still cool and the road stretched out like a silver ribbon under a pale orange sky. Cars passed now and then, most of them people heading to work or dropping kids at school. A dark gray sedan moved steadily along the road, not too fast, not too slow. Inside the car sat a woman in her 30s. Her posture was calm, her eyes focused. Her face carried the kind of confidence that comes from experience. Her name was Maya Johnson, though no one on that road knew who she was or what she did for a living. To everyone else, she just looked like an ordinary woman driving to her job. What no one could tell was that she wasn't just any professional heading to work. She was a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She was dressed casually that morning, plain white shirt, dark jeans, and a light jacket. Nothing about her clothes hinted at her job. Her badge and weapon were tucked away in her black leather bag on the passenger seat beside her. She was on her way to a federal briefing in Atlanta, where she would join other agents to discuss an ongoing case. It wasn't unusual for her to drive herself, especially for local meetings. She liked the peace of an early morning drive. No noise, no rush, just time to think. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard. She had about 40 minutes before the meeting started. She was right on time. She took a deep breath and turned on the radio, letting a soft tune fill the car. Everything felt calm and ordinary. Then a flash of blue and red lights appeared in her rearview mirror. Maya frowned lightly. She glanced at her speedometer. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't made any sudden lane changes either. For a second, she thought maybe the police car was trying to get around her to chase someone else. But when she switched lanes, the car followed. She sighed quietly, slowed down, and pulled over to the side of the road. The police cruiser stopped right behind her, lights still flashing. Maya turned off the radio, rolled down her window halfway, and placed both hands on the steering wheel. It was a habit, something she had taught others to do during training sessions. She knew how quickly things could go wrong when people got nervous during traffic stops. In her side mirror, she saw the officer step out of his car. He looked young, maybe late 20s. His posture was stiff, like someone trying to show authority. He adjusted his belt and walked toward her slowly. "Morning, officer," Maya said politely when he came near her window. The man looked at her, his expression flat at first, then shifting slightly as his eyes moved from her face to the inside of her car. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he tilted his head and said, "You know why I stopped you?" "No, sir," Maya replied calmly. "Was I speeding?" He crossed his arms. "You were driving a little too slow in the left lane. People like to use that lane for passing," Maya blinked. "I see. I can move over next time." But his tone didn't ease up. He leaned a little closer, his eyes narrowing. "Were you heading this early?" "To a meeting in the city," she said. "What kind of meeting?" "Work-related." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of work you do?" Maya's tone stayed polite, even though she could sense his suspicion. "I work in federal service." "Federal service?" He repeated, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's a big word for someone driving an unmarked car. Maya didn't respond right away. She knew that tone. It was the kind of tone she'd heard before, one that came when someone had already made a silent judgment about her. "I'm not trying to be rude," he added quickly, though his voice said otherwise. "It's just that, well, people usually dress more official if they're from the government." Maya smiled faintly, trying to keep the situation easy. "I'm off duty right now." "Off duty," he said again, as if testing the words. He straightened up and looked over her car again, his eyes resting on her bag. "Mind if I see your license and registration?" "Of course," she said. She reached slowly toward her bag, careful and deliberate, just as she had done 100 times before. She handed him her license and registration. He took them and glanced at her name. "Maya Johnson," he read aloud. Then he looked at her again, his expression tightening for just a second. "You live around here?" "Yes, not far from here," she said. "Uh-huh." He nodded slowly but didn't walk back to his car. Instead, he kept looking at her like he was trying to figure her out. "Nice car. How long you had it?" "About a year," she said. He chuckled under his breath. "Must be doing pretty well for yourself, huh?" Maya's fingers tightened on the steering wheel for a second. His tone wasn't friendly. It was the kind of tone people used when they thought something didn't add up, when they assumed someone didn't belong where they were. "Just doing my job," Same as you, she said gently. That line seemed to catch him off guard. My job? He repeated, almost laughing. Yeah, I don't think our jobs are that similar. Maya stayed silent. She didn't want to argue. Experience had taught her that sometimes silence spoke louder than defense. The officer looked at her again, his expression changing from suspicion to something like challenge. You sure you don't have anything to tell me, Ms. Johnson? Nothing I should know about before I run your plates? I don't think so, officer, she said calmly. You're welcome to check. He squinted, waiting for her to react. When she didn't, he turned and walked back to his cruiser. Maya exhaled slowly. She looked at the clock. She was going to be late. She picked up her phone and opened her messages, typing a short note to her supervisor. Running a few minutes behind. On the road. Through the mirror, she watched the officer sitting in his car typing into his computer. The minutes passed slowly. Cars drove by, some slowing down to see what was happening. Finally, he stepped out again and came back to her window. License checks out, he said shortly. But I'm going to need to see proof of where you work. You said you're with the government? Yes, Maya said evenly. He tapped his pen against his notepad. So can you show me an ID or something? Federal badge. I mean, if that's really what you do. There it was again in that tone. The disbelief, the quiet judgment tucked behind polite words. Maya took a slow breath. Officer, she said, her voice steady but gentle. Is there a particular reason you need to see that? Well, he said, shifting his weight, I just want to make sure you're not saying things that aren't true. We get all kinds out here. Some people like to claim their government to get out of tickets. She nodded slowly. I understand. Then she reached for her bag, opened it carefully, and pulled out her black leather badge wallet. She held it in her hand without opening it. Before I show you this, I want to remind you I've been polite and cooperative since the beginning of this stop, she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. Yeah, you have. Why? Because I'd like the same respect in return, she said, looking him directly in the eye. For a brief second, he hesitated. Maybe it was her calm tone. Maybe it was something in her expression, but he said nothing. She flipped open the wallet. Inside, gleaming under the morning light, was a gold badge and an ID card marked Federal Bureau of Investigation. The officer's eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Maya closed the wallet and placed it back in her bag. I appreciate you doing your job, she said simply. But I have a meeting to get to. He swallowed hard, his earlier confidence fading. I didn't realize. It's fine, she said, her voice calm and kind. We all have to start somewhere. Just remember, the way you treat someone says a lot about the badge you wear. For a moment, he stood there, unsure what to say. Then he nodded quickly and stepped back. You're free to go, ma'am. Thank you, she said, and rolled up her window. As she pulled back onto the road, the sunlight had grown brighter. She glanced in the rearview mirror once more. The officer was still standing by his car, watching her drive away. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle inside her. It wasn't anger she felt, it was disappointment, maybe even sadness. She had worked years to earn her position, to prove her worth. Yet even now, in plain daylight, she could see how easily some people judged without knowing. But she didn't dwell on it. She had a job to do, and she wasn't going to let one encounter ruin her day. She turned the radio back on, adjusted her mirror, and kept driving toward the city, steady, focused, and unshaken. The day after the traffic stop, Maya woke up earlier than usual. She had slept only a few hours, her mind replaying what had happened on that roadside. Even though she had kept her cool, the officer's attitude lingered in her thoughts. It wasn't anger that kept her awake, and it was disappointment. She'd faced tough situations before, even dangerous ones. But it was always different when the disrespect came from someone who wore the same uniform of duty and service. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee in her hands, staring out the window. The morning was quiet except for a few birds singing. She knew she couldn't let one bad experience weigh her down. But deep inside, she also knew that incidents like that happened too often, and not everyone could handle them as calmly as she did. After finishing her coffee, she got ready for work. She put on her usual office clothes, a navy blue suit, white shirt, and small gold earrings. Her badge hung from a lanyard inside her jacket. She looked at herself in the mirror, straightened her collar, and whispered, "Stay calm. Do your job." By the time she reached the FBI field office, the building was already buzzing. Agents moved through the lobby carrying files, greeting each other with quick nods. Maya greeted the security guard at the front desk, scanned her ID, and entered the elevator. As the doors closed, she took a slow breath. She didn't plan to mention the traffic stop to anyone. Not yet. The elevator opened on the 3rd floor. She walked into the briefing room, where her supervisor and a few other agents were already gathered. On the screen at the front, case notes and maps were displayed. "Maya," her supervisor said, "glad you could make it." "We were just getting started." She smiled politely and took her seat. The meeting went on for about an hour. They discussed surveillance updates and upcoming operations. Maya contributed where needed, her tone professional, her focus sharp. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But behind her composed expression, her mind kept drifting back to yesterday's encounter. The officer's face, his tone, his disbelief when she showed her badge. After the meeting ended, she stayed behind for a moment, organizing her notes. Her supervisor, a calm and observant man, noticed her quietness. "You all right?" he asked gently. Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." He gave her a small smile. "Don't burn yourself out. You've been running nonstop lately." "I know," she said softly. When she got back to her desk, a message popped up on her screen, a reminder about a joint training program between the FBI and local police departments. It was part of an initiative to build better cooperation between agencies. She had signed up to help with the training months ago. Ironically, it was scheduled for the same police department that employed the officer who had stopped her. She stared at the message for a few seconds, then smiled faintly to herself. Life had a way of bringing things full circle. Later that afternoon, she drove to the station for a pre-meeting. The building looked like most small-town precincts. Brick walls, a few parked patrol cars, and the faint smell of coffee from somewhere inside. As she walked through the doors, a few officers glanced her way, some nodding politely, others curious about the new face in a federal suit. The front desk sergeant greeted her warmly and led her to the conference room. "The chief will be in shortly," he said. "Thank you," Maya replied with a smile. She took a seat near the front, placing her bag on the floor beside her. A few minutes later, several officers entered, chatting among themselves. She recognized one face immediately, the same young officer from yesterday. His name tag read B. Turner. He froze when he saw her. For a brief second, the color drained from his face. Maya gave him a polite nod, nothing more. He quickly looked away and found a seat in the back. The chief walked in, shaking hands and introducing Maya to the group. "This is Special Agent Johnson from the FBI. She'll be helping us with next week's interagency training." There was a round of quiet greetings. Maya smiled at them all, her voice steady and friendly. "I'm looking forward to working with you," she said. For the next hour, they discussed schedules, coordination, and objectives. Maya spoke with confidence, outlining how the training would cover teamwork, communication, and field ethics. Her tone was calm but engaging. Every time she spoke, the room listened. Officer Turner stayed quiet. He didn't say a word, but Maya could feel his unease from across the room. She didn't look his way often, but she could sense the weight of his discomfort. When the meeting ended, most officers left quickly. Turner stayed behind for a moment, pretending to check his notes. Maya was packing her bag when she heard his voice behind her. "Agent Johnson?" She turned slowly. "Yes, Officer Turner," he cleared his throat. His voice was quieter than before, almost unsure. "I just wanted to say about yesterday. I didn't mean to come off the way I did." She looked at him for a moment, her expression calm but serious. "You were doing your job," she said. He nodded, eyes down. "Still, I should have handled it better." "It's all right," she interrupted gently. "What matters is what you learn from it." He met her eyes for a brief moment. There was no anger in hers, just quiet strength. That seemed to unsettle him even more. "Thank you," he said softly. She gave a small nod and left the room. As she walked to her car, she thought about how strange life could be. How people cross paths in ways that teach lessons neither of them expected. She didn't hate the young officer. In fact, she pitied him a little. Sometimes ignorance wasn't born from hatred, but from lack of experience. Over the next few days, she prepared for the training. It would bring together both FBI agents and local officers. Her session would focus on field interactions. how to treat citizens respectfully, and how to stay calm under pressure. When the training day arrived, the large hall buzzed with activity. Officers from different departments filled the seats. Maya stood at the front with a microphone greeting them warmly. Today, she began, isn't just about rules and procedures. It's about understanding people. Every person you stop, question, or protect has a story. You might not know it, but your words and tone can change how that story goes. The room quieted. Her voice carried a calm power that drew people in. She shared a few examples of tense situations from her own experience, moments where respect and patience prevented escalation. Then she said something that made even Turner shift in his seat. Sometimes, she said slowly, you'll meet someone who doesn't look like what you expect. Maybe they don't fit the image in your mind of who should be driving a certain car or walking in a certain neighborhood, but your job isn't to judge who belongs. It's to protect, to serve, and to stay professional no matter what. Her words hung in the air. Turner lowered his gaze, the memory of their roadside encounter flashing vividly in his mind. He knew she was speaking from experience, and he knew exactly which experience that was. After the session ended, several officers came up to thank her. Turner stayed back, watching her quietly. He looked as if he wanted to speak again, but he didn't. He simply nodded when she caught his eye. She nodded back, calm, steady, and dignified. Later, as she walked out into the parking lot, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement. She stopped for a moment beside her car, taking in the quiet around her. The wind moved gently through the trees, and for the first time since that morning on the highway, she felt at peace. What happened had stung. Yes, but now something good was coming from it. A moment of reflection not only for her but for others who needed to see beyond assumptions. She opened her car door and sat for a moment before starting the engine. She thought about the road ahead, not just the one that stretched before her now, but the longer one she had chosen years ago when she first joined the Bureau. It was a road filled with challenges, but also chances to change minds, even quietly, one encounter at a time. As she drove away, she smiled faintly to herself. She didn't need to prove her worth to anyone. Her actions, her integrity, and her calm strength spoke louder than any badge could. And though Officer Turner might never fully admit it, she knew he would remember that day, and maybe, just maybe, he'd think twice the next time he pulled someone over. The following week arrived faster than Maya expected. The joint training between the FBI and the local police department had gone well so far. Every session she led was calm but firm, built on lessons she had learned through years of field work. She didn't try to lecture anyone. She just told stories, real ones, about what respect and composure could do in tense situations. People listened. Even the ones who came in skeptical began to nod by the end. Some officers stayed after each session to talk with her. They asked questions not just about tactics, but about how to stay calm when things got heated. Among those officers was Turner. He had stopped avoiding her, though he still kept a respectful distance. He seemed quieter than before, more thoughtful. Maya noticed how he took notes during her talks, how he sometimes paused like he was thinking through something personal. On the last day of the program, the chief decided to hold a short closing ceremony in the main hall. The atmosphere was lighter that morning. Everyone was smiling, joking, and taking pictures together. For Maya, it was good to see. That was what the whole effort was about, building bridges instead of walls. She was speaking with a few colleagues near the entrance when she heard someone call her name. "Agent Johnson?" She turned. It was Turner standing a few steps away. He looked nervous but determined. "Yes," she said, offering a polite smile. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course." They stepped aside from the small crowd. Turner took a slow breath before speaking. "I just wanted to thank you for everything, for the training, for the way you handled things." She studied him quietly for a moment. His tone was different now. No hint of arrogance, no defensiveness, just sincerity. "I appreciate that," she said. He shifted awkwardly. "You know, after that morning I went home and kept thinking about it. I thought about how quick I was to assume things. It bothered me, not just because you were an agent, but because I realized I could have treated anyone that way." Maya nodded. "It's good that you recognized it. That's how you grow." He looked down at his hands. "It won't happen again," he said quietly. "I believe you," she replied. "And I respect that you're trying to learn from it." That's what matters, he gave a small, almost relieved smile. Thank you, ma'am. She smiled back, and that was the end of it. No long speeches, no dramatic moment. Just quiet understanding between two people who had learned something from each other. When the ceremony ended, Maya shook hands with several officers and thanked the chief for his cooperation. As she left the building, the sky was turning gray. A light rain started to fall, tapping gently on her car roof. She sat for a moment before turning on the engine, thinking about how life sometimes placed people in your path for a reason, not always pleasant, but often meaningful. She drove back to the FBI office, her thoughts calm. But when she walked inside, she noticed something unusual. Several agents were standing around the reception area talking in low voices. One of them glanced her way, then quickly looked back at the group. Her supervisor appeared from the hallway. "Maya," he said, waving her over. "Glad you're back. Can you come to my office for a minute?" "Sure," she said, curious. When she entered his office, he closed the door behind her. "We've just received something you should see," he said, sitting at his desk. He clicked on his computer and opened a video file. On the screen, there was body camera footage from a police car. It took Maya a second to realize what she was watching. It was the traffic stop from last week. Her car, the roadside, the officer, everything. She sat quietly as the video played. She heard the same words, the same tone she had tried to forget. But hearing them again from a camera's point of view made it more real. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened slightly. Her supervisor watched her carefully. When the video ended, he said, "Someone from the police department forwarded this to us. They said it came up during an internal review. Apparently another officer flagged it after seeing how you were treated." Maya took a slow breath. "I see. We're not here to embarrass anyone," he said firmly. "But this footage is concerning. We'll have to document it." She nodded. "I understand. I wasn't planning to report it, but if it's already on record, I'll cooperate." He leaned forward. "You handled it well, Maya, very well. But I want to be clear, no one should talk to you like that, not even during a stop." "I appreciate that," she said softly. He gave her a reassuring look. "For now, let's keep this quiet while the department reviews it. They're already investigating." "Understood." That evening, when Maya got home, she sat on her couch in silence for a long time. The house felt still, almost too quiet. She wasn't upset, just thoughtful. She wondered what Turner must be feeling, now that the incident was being reviewed. She didn't want him to lose his career over one mistake, but she also believed in accountability. The next day, news traveled fast. The local news station reported that an officer was under review for unprofessional conduct during a traffic stop involving a federal agent. They didn't name names, but it wasn't hard for people inside the departments to figure it out. At the precinct, Turner sat in his car, watching the rain fall on his windshield. His hands rested on the steering wheel, unmoving. He'd been told that the video had reached both his chief and the FBI office. He knew it was bad, not just for his record, but for his reputation. Still, deep down, he knew he had brought it on himself. Later that afternoon, he was called into the chief's office. The meeting was short but serious. He wasn't suspended yet, but he was placed on administrative duty while the investigation continued. That evening, Maya received a call from the police chief. His voice was calm but formal. "Agent Johnson," he said, "I just wanted to let you know we're handling the situation internally. I've spoken with Officer Turner, and I assure you we're taking this seriously." "Thank you, Chief," she said politely. "I appreciate the professionalism." "We're also grateful for how you handled it," he added. "You could have made this much worse, but you didn't. That speaks volumes." Maya smiled faintly. Sometimes the quiet response makes the loudest point. The next few days felt long. People whispered about the story at the station and even at her office. Maya tried not to pay attention. She went on with her work, meetings, reports, and follow-ups, as if nothing had changed. One evening, she was leaving the office when she noticed someone waiting near the parking lot. It was Turner. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from stress, not lack of sleep. "Agent Johnson," he said, his voice low. "Officer Turner," she replied calmly. "Is everything all right?" He nodded slowly. "I just wanted to say, I heard they sent the video to your office. I know it's out of my hands now, but I wanted you to know. I'm not proud of how I acted. I've been thinking about it every day." She studied him for a long moment. There was no anger in her eyes, only quiet reflection. We all make mistakes, she said softly. What matters is what you do after them. I'm going to take responsibility, he said. Whatever happens, I deserve it, she nodded. That's the right mindset. But don't let it define you. Learn from it, then move forward. He looked at her with gratitude. You're kinder than I deserve. It's not about kindness, she said. It's about fairness. For a few seconds, they just stood there in silence, the evening air cool and still. Then Turner gave a small nod and walked away. Maya watched him go, her expression unreadable. She knew he would face consequences, but she also hoped the lesson would stay with him longer than the punishment. That night, as she drove home under the soft glow of streetlights, she thought about everything that had happened where, from the moment he stopped her on that quiet highway to now. Life had a strange way of turning small moments into big lessons. She smiled faintly to herself. The road ahead was long, and there would always be challenges. But she was ready, calm, patient, and stronger than before. And somewhere in another part of the city, Officer Turner sat at his desk, writing a long letter of reflection his department required, a letter he hoped would not just satisfy his superiors, but remind him of the kind of officer he wanted to become. 2 people, 1 encounter, 2 very different lessons, both changed by a single moment on a quiet stretch of road. The investigation moved quietly over the next few weeks. No one talked about it openly, but everyone in both departments seemed to know something was going on. The video of the traffic stop had been reviewed by senior officers and the city's internal affairs team. They wanted to understand what had happened and what needed to be done next. Maya didn't ask for updates. She focused on her own work, keeping her days filled with reports, case reviews, and training sessions. It wasn't that she didn't care. She just believed that once you do what's right, you have to let the process take its course. Still, it wasn't easy to ignore. Every so often, she'd walk into a meeting or a hallway and notice people lowering their voices when she passed. She understood. People talked. That was human nature. One afternoon, her supervisor called her into his office again. You have a minute? He asked. Of course, she said, stepping in. He motioned for her to sit down. I wanted to update you on that situation with the local officer, he said. The review's done. She nodded quietly, waiting. They've decided on disciplinary action. Nothing extreme. Suspension and mandatory retraining. The department also issued a formal apology to you. It'll be on file. Maya's face stayed calm. I see. Her supervisor studied her expression. You're taking this well. There's no reason not to, she said gently. The goal wasn't punishment. It was awareness. If he learns from it, that's enough. He smiled faintly. You've got a good way of seeing things. Most people would have pushed for more. I don't think anger fixes anything, she said simply. Sometimes the quiet lesson lasts longer. Later that evening, as she was gathering her things to head home, she noticed an email in her inbox. It was from the police department's chief. The message was short. Agent Johnson, thank you again for your professionalism and patience throughout this process. Officer Turner has accepted responsibility for his actions. He'll be completing additional training under supervision. We deeply regret the situation and appreciate your example of restraint and leadership. Maya read the message twice, then closed her laptop. It was enough. That weekend, she took a rare day off. She drove out to a quiet park just outside the city. The trees were just starting to change color, their leaves golden under the afternoon sun. Families were walking dogs. Children were laughing near the pond, and somewhere nearby someone was playing a guitar softly. She sat on a bench near the water, breathing in the fresh air. For the first time in weeks, she felt completely at peace. She had done what she could, and now life could move on. But life had its way of connecting paths again. A few days later, she received a call from the police department's community liaison. They were organizing a town event about law enforcement transparency, a kind of open forum where officers and community members could talk, ask questions, and share ideas. The liaison asked if she'd be willing to speak briefly about professionalism in the field. At first, Maya hesitated. Public events weren't really her thing, but something about the timing felt right. Maybe people needed to hear the message from someone who had lived it. So, she agreed. When the day came, the event was held in the local community center. Rows of chairs filled the main hall, and people from all walks of life showed up. Parents, students, local business owners, and police officers. The atmosphere was friendly but curious. Everyone wanted to understand how trust could be rebuilt between the public and the people meant to protect them. Maya arrived early. She wore a simple dark suit, nothing flashy. The chief greeted her warmly, and so did several officers she recognized from the training program. When the event started, a few speakers went first and local officials, community leaders and police representatives. They all spoke about the importance of respect, transparency, and communication. Then it was Maya's turn. She stepped up to the microphone. The room quieted. "Good evening," she began with a small smile. "I'm Special Agent Johnson from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I've worked in law enforcement for over a decade, and I've seen both the best and the hardest sides of this job." Her voice was calm, steady, filled with quiet strength. "When you wear a badge," she continued, "you carry more than authority. You carry responsibility. The responsibility to protect, to listen, and to act fairly, no matter who's in front of you. Every person you meet has a story you don't know. Sometimes we forget that." People in the audience nodded. A few officers leaned forward in their chairs. She paused, letting her words settle. "Not long ago," she said, "I was part of an encounter that reminded me how important it is to treat people with respect. I won't go into details, but it taught me that even one moment, one wrong word or action, can affect how someone views all of us in this profession." She looked across the crowd. "But that same moment can also lead to change. It can wake us up. We all make mistakes. What defines us isn't the mistake itself, but how we respond afterward." A quiet murmur of agreement passed through the room. As she spoke, she noticed someone near the back of the room. Turner. He wasn't in uniform this time, just plain clothes. He sat quietly, listening. When their eyes met for a brief second, she gave a small nod. He returned it almost gratefully. When the event ended, people came up to thank her. A few community members said her words had moved them. Officers shook her hand. She smiled politely and thanked them all. Turner approached last. He waited until the room had mostly emptied before walking up. "Agent Johnson," he said softly. "Officer Turner," she replied. "I wanted to be here tonight," he said. "Not because I had to, but because I needed to hear it. What you said, it hit home." She looked at him kindly. "That means a lot." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "I've started volunteering at the youth outreach program the department runs. Figured it's time I give something back. Maybe if I can talk to kids early, they won't grow up feeling afraid of uniforms." "That's a good step," she said warmly. "Real change starts small, but it spreads." He smiled slightly. "Thank you for not giving up on people like me." She shook her head. "I didn't do anything special. You chose to change. That's the real work." They parted with mutual respect. No bitterness between them, just understanding. A week later, Maya received a letter in her office mailbox. It was handwritten, the paper folded neatly. The handwriting was careful and uneven, like someone who'd rewritten it a few times before sending. It was from Turner. He wrote about how the experience had changed his outlook, how he realized he had let assumptions cloud his judgment, and how he wanted to be a better officer, not just for his career but for the people he served. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you. You showed me that respect isn't given because of a badge. It's earned through how we treat people, no matter who they are." Maya read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. She didn't need to reply. The letter itself was enough, proof that the lesson had taken root. That evening, as she left the office, the sunset painted the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. She walked to her car slowly, breathing in the calm air. The world still had its problems, but moments like this reminded her why she had chosen this path in the first place. She wasn't out to change the world overnight, just to make a difference where she could. One person at a time, and somewhere across town, Turner stood outside the youth center, greeting a group of teenagers as they arrived. He laughed with them, listened to their stories, and for the first time in a long while felt proud of the badge he wore. Not because of authority, but because of purpose. Maya drove past that same area later that night on her way home. She didn't see him, but she smiled anyway, sensing that somehow things had come full circle. What had started as an unpleasant morning on a quiet road had turned into something far greater. a reminder that even uncomfortable moments can become seeds for understanding, if met with patience and grace. She turned onto the highway, the city lights glowing ahead. The road stretched out before her, long, open, and full of promise. Several months passed, and life had settled into a calm rhythm again. The world had moved on from the headlines, but for Maya, the experience had left a quiet mark. She didn't talk about it much, yet it had changed how she saw people, not just in uniform, but everyone she came across. Her work at the bureau continued as usual. There were new investigations, training sessions, and community meetings. But something inside her had shifted. She'd started to notice how easily frustration and judgment could cloud even the most disciplined minds. She saw it in young recruits, in officers eager to prove themselves, and sometimes even in herself. That tension between authority and humility. It made her more aware, more intentional in how she spoke to others. She had always believed in fairness, but now she carried that belief with a deeper sense of purpose. One morning she received an invitation that surprised her. It was from the training division, a request for her to lead a session on ethics and professionalism for both FBI agents and local police officers. The message mentioned that her name had been personally recommended because of how she handled a difficult field situation with grace and restraint. She smiled as she read it. She knew exactly what that meant. The seminar was scheduled for the following month. She had plenty of time to prepare, but she wanted to do more than just talk about policies and procedures. She wanted to make people feel something, to remind them that behind every badge, behind every uniform, there were humans dealing with other humans. The morning of the seminar arrived sooner than expected. The auditorium at the federal building was filled with a mix of agents, officers, and even a few community representatives. The room buzzed with quiet conversation as people took their seats. Maya stood near the podium, glancing at the faces around her. Some were young and eager, fresh out of the academy. Others were veterans, serious and thoughtful. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. When the clock struck 10, she stepped forward and began to speak. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile. "Thank you all for being here today. I know everyone's schedules are packed, so I'll keep this honest and real." Her voice carried easily through the room. "I've spent more than 10 years in law enforcement," she continued. "In that time, I've seen how quickly respect can build, and how quickly it can be lost. Every time we put on this uniform or this badge, we're not just representing an agency. We're representing an idea. The idea that people can trust us to do the right thing, even when no one is watching." A few heads nodded quietly in the crowd. She paced slowly as she spoke, not reading from notes but speaking from memory. "Most of you will have moments in your career that test you. Moments that will push your patience, your pride, or your assumptions. It's easy to react when you feel challenged. It's harder to pause and think before you speak or act. But that pause, that second of thought, can change everything." Her words hung in the air. She went on to describe a general story, not using names or departments, about a simple traffic stop that went wrong. She didn't include details about who said what or how it ended. Instead, she focused on the lesson. That empathy and respect were stronger tools than authority ever could be. "I've learned," she said softly, "that respect given freely doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Because every time we show restraint, we build trust. And trust, once broken, is hard to earn back." The audience was quiet now, listening intently. She told them about the importance of communication, about how one officer's tone, one careless word, could change someone's entire view of law enforcement. We can't afford to forget that the people we meet are often at their most vulnerable. How we treat them in those moments says more about us than any badge ever could. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then came the applause. Not loud or forced, but genuine. As people began to leave, a few stopped to thank her. One young officer said, "That hit me harder than I expected. I needed to hear that." She smiled and told him, "Then it was worth it." When the room had mostly cleared, she gathered her notes and turned to leave. But then she noticed someone standing near the doorway. It was Turner. He was in plain clothes again, holding a folder under his arm. He gave her a small nod before walking over. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said gently. "I volunteered for the joint training," he replied. "I thought it might be good for me." "I think that's a great decision," she said, smiling softly. He looked around the emptying room, then back at her. You know, a few months ago, I wouldn't have understood half of what you said today. I used to think respect was something people had to give me. Now I mean,